Good morning. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I hereby call to order the October 17th, 2024 public hearing of the City of Prescott Board of Adjustments. Board members present, please state your name when I call your name during roll call. I'm Jim Lamerson. I'm the chairman. Tony Teeters.
Present.
Thomas Davis.
Present. Tom Davis.
Mary Fredrickson.
Here, Mary Fredrickson.
Miriam Haubrick.
Here, Miriam Haubrick.
Mark Hoekness.
I'm here.
Tom Hutchinson.
Good morning, Tom Hutchinson.
Boy, this is nice. We have a full board today. So, as we know, it takes a quorum to do anything that's positive and legal. So, our public meeting is being recorded by the city. The proceedings are being televised by representatives of the public media, the public local cable and/or radio stations, and may also be broadcast. The number of members here today is 7 and will require 4 votes for a majority. Members of the public are required to state their name for the record so that we may know who is speaking and be able to contact them later if necessary. Please put all electronic devices to where we can't hear them. Thank you. I'm going to turn this over now.
We just have to vote on the last month's meeting minutes.
That's what I meant. I'm going to turn this over now as soon as we vote on the minutes of last month. Did you all have a chance to read the minutes? Yes. Any discussions or disagreements with the way the minutes were presented? Not hearing any, I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes as delivered.
Tom Davis, I'll move to approve the minutes.
Mary Fredrickson, second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by saying nay. Not hearing any nay, the ayes have it. Now I'm going to turn this over.
Thank you, Chairman, board members, Kaylee Nunez, Community Planner. So first off, we just have a notice of continuance for item CUP 24-004 for the helipad request out on State Route 69. It was going to be taken to this meeting, and then we got a request from the applicant to postpone to the November meeting. So you will be hearing that on November 21st. So our one and only voting item, V24-008, Peregrine Ridge retaining wall variance request. So I just want to reiterate, this is not for the subdivision as a whole. This is just a request for a height variance for the retaining walls. So the plat for the subdivision as a whole has gone through the preliminary plat process, and now the final plat is under staff review, and that will follow, the proper public hearing processes. So the request is for a variance to the Land Development Code, section 6.8.4.d, which is within the hillside development standards, to increase the maximum retaining wall height of 8 foot to 10 foot in sections due to topographical challenges. And you'll see the section of the wall that I present in a few slides. Most of the walls will be 9 foot, but there is one that will be 10 foot. So, location, Peregrine Ridge, west of North State Route 89, kind of northwest from Watson Lake. It's a 24-acre parcel. Here's the zoning map. So the zoning is business general, which allows both residential and commercial uses. And then you see nearby we have multifamily medium and a planned area of development. And then to the north we have commercial. The green is Watson Lake Park. Aerial imagery. So you see the golf course to the west. And that is the 89 Willow Lake Roundabout. I thought it pertinent to show the topographical map just to kind of show the elevation change. And it got a bit obscured on that top label. So at the top, it's 5,350 feet, and then it drops to 5,250 feet over a relatively short distance. So the slopes range from 20 to 40% in areas. Hence why we reviewed it against the hillside development standards. I tried to get this as big as possible. So I'm presenting two sections of the site plan provided by Line Engineering. And I apologize, I got my directions mixed up. This is the northwest section. So let me go back. Oops. Not forward. Okay, so, oh, cool. So here. It's fancy. Red delineates areas where the retaining wall variance is being requested. So that parcel abutting is Prescott Lakes land. And then this is a western section. And so that parcel is owned, privately owned by an individual. And that will come up in a little bit. So, all right, here is a section, retaining wall section provided by the engineer, Line Engineering. And again, it's hard to make things visible on these screens, but basically this diagram shows 9-foot increments. But then the applicant, Luther Kraxberger, confirmed there's just one wall that's 10 foot that's being requested. So George wouldn't let me go out on the highway to take more photos. He said it was too dangerous. So I used this Google Maps imagery. So basically, this is standing on the east side of 89, looking up at the site. It's on a hill. So variance review criteria per the Land Development Code: extraordinary conditions, substantial detriment, special privileges, self-induced hardship, general plan, and utilization. So the staff report has the full analysis. I'm just going to hit the highlights here. So, research the area. Multiple large retaining walls are present in the development to the southwest, which is Astoria 1 in Prescott Lakes. Those can be observed from the highway and from the trail across the lake because they're on top of a ridge. Astoria 2, they're doing the grading right now, which is between the subject property, and that's supposed to say Astoria 1. Between subject property and Astoria 1 has multiple long runs of retaining walls indicated on their civil plans, which doesn't come as a surprise because that's also on a hill. As such, no special privilege would be conferred due to approval of this request. The site topography necessitates construction of multiple retaining walls for slope stabilization. The hardship is not self-inflicted. The land, came like that. And it is in compliance with the current general plan, which indicates that corridor as commercial, which BG primarily is, but again, it also allows residential uses. Neighborhood outreach. So our requirements per state law are to send out mailings within a 300-foot buffer. I set it out to 1,300 foot because I thought it important that we include more property owners. So again, we posted the property. That was interesting, getting up there. Published a notice in the paper. So we did receive one letter of opposition from the adjacent property owner to the east, and it was just like a general opposition, asking us that we follow the hillside development standards to a T. So based on the analysis, staff recommendation is move to approve V24-008 as presented. And I'm open for any questions. We also have the applicant, Luther Kraxberger, here.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Before I go to the board, George, thank you for chivalry. I'm glad it's not dead. Thinking of our staff members' public safety and all that stuff. Okay. Are there
Mr. Chair.
comments from the board?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mark Oakness here. If the variance wasn't granted, would that reduce the number of property lots on your, if you go to the plot plan, that one there. So where the wall is, it looks like it hits 4 lots.
Yeah, I can have Luther clarify that. And you bringing that up also brought another point to my mind that, again, Luther can clarify. By requesting taller walls, there could be less tiers of them, if that makes sense. So in the hillside development code specifies that the sum of the retaining wall heights can be no greater than 36 feet. And actually, this request is not to exceed that, is to exceed the individual wall limit of 8 feet, if that makes sense.
Yes, that does. That's helpful. Thank you. But if, to the question I've got, if there were no walls built, or they were built, if they were built specifically to code, would that make the lots that you see on the plot, I see on the plot plan, they're smaller, or would it make it that they just couldn't have those 4 lots?
I will defer to Luther for that.
Okay, thank you.
I don't want to make an assumption.
Luther Kraxberger, it would impede those lots from being developable, as well as the stormwater retention basins would become smaller. So we'd have to re-engineer those. And so it's kind of it's a twofold if those walls are reduced to basically re-engineer everything.
So re-engineering would be required, but you would be able to utilize those lots?
Not likely, because it would impede them such that they would get into the building envelope, and it wouldn't work for the product that we're working on, and we'd probably end up losing quite a few lots, more than the 4 that you see here. There's 2 in the middle that we would probably end up losing as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question. Are board members any more questions of either the applicant or staff?
Yeah, Tom Hutchison here. Kaylee and the applicant, I guess. Let me ask it a little different way. If this is not approved, does it kill the project?
That is a question for Luther.
I mean, I guess not, but I'd have to look back at the numbers and figure out how to, it would be very detrimental financially, time-wise, we've gone through the city review 4 different times, and this was the first time that this was brought up on the 4th review. So, timing-wise, it would kill the project as it sits today.
It would certainly reduce the scope of the project,
Yeah,
and it would require another engineering solution.
it would mean a lot more money spent, yeah.
Thank you for your question. Going up and down the board, are there any more?
Yes, Chair, Mary Frederickson, for staff, and maybe this just for my own understanding, because I understand that the 36-foot criteria is not impacted, at least by this variance request. Is that correct? What does that 36-foot entail? I understand it's kind of a sum.
Yeah, so the vertical, if you do the sum of the vertical runs of, all the retaining walls, if you pick sections, it can't be more than 36 feet.
So in any individual identified section of retaining wall would be counted. So if there was only a 6-foot run of wall, that 6-foot run would be counted as part of the sum.
Yes, so there's a great, you know what? I'm going to pass this around. This is a diagram out of the Land Development Code. So, a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Thank you for that. I'll pass it along.
Yeah, so this diagram indicates 4 9-foot sections.
And maybe this is for Luther. That diagram that we're looking at just right now, is there any plan for the tiers between those retaining walls? Maybe this is jumping ahead in the process,
No,
but
that's okay. All the walls are designed at what's considered a 1-to-1 ratio. So if we go up 10 feet, we're going to go back 10 feet and then up 10 feet. So this picture that you see is out of scale. Each one of those drawbacks is 9 feet in between the walls. And so there's a section on there. We go up 10 feet, back 13 feet, and then up 6, or up 8 rather. So it's designed to look less than a 1-to-1.
and is the game plan eventually to have landscaping in there?
Yeah, we haven't finalized the landscaping plan. I haven't submitted that to the HOA yet either, but as desert-friendly landscaping in between there as possible.
Thank you. I thought I was jumping ahead in the process, but thank you for that.
Yeah, it's so the landscaping is required per the hillside development standards to soften the effect. And also having a larger step back is also preferable because you can landscape that area better. That makes sense.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for your question, Mary. Anybody else on the board?
Mr. Chair, yes. Mark Hokins, I have another question. If you could go to the chart that has the bullet points on what makes that one right there. Wouldn't this be a self-induced hardship the way the plot is designed? I mean, the applicant could have chose to have less lots and not had to violate the hillside ordinance.
You know, that's an interesting way to frame it, but generally we review it against how the land is in its natural state. So you could say that any variance is self-induced, right? Because like even sometimes we see like residential sheds, and they want to be 5 foot back from the property line as opposed to the 7. And it's because they want to save this ancient juniper tree. And we could just say, well, build the shed smaller. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, but I guess to the applicant's point, I guess it was further in the reviews. I think he said the fourth cycle that it was pointed out. But if it was designed from the beginning with the code in mind, either the applicant would have pointed that out that they needed to change it, or they would have had a plot plan that would have been compliant.
No, that's a good point. Like, I'm glad you framed it that way, but that's not how we consider them. And I could let Luther speak to this. We don't get into the economics of things, but there's a certain amount of units they have to have it pencil out, right? We see this with, any multifamily project. So with that said, yeah, I don't know if it would be a viable project if they just reduce the units. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
We did start with 52 units, and it's penciled down and moving walls and keeping under the 36-foot overall wall height. We had to reduce that down to 48. So we have reduced the number of houses going in there by 4 over the course of the project to meet the 36-foot requirement and not meet the 8-foot requirement, the 8 within the 36, if that makes sense. Because as the hill slope falls away, the 8-foot walls just don't catch on the topography. So we have reduced, and this is where we're at now.
Thank you.
Thank you for the conversation. Anything more from the board?
Yes, pardon me, Mr. Chairman. Maybe, I don't know if this is for the applicant or not. There's 2 questions. One is, Kelly, you referred to the neighboring project that has retaining walls. Do they have a variance? Are those 8 foot within the 8 foot requirement?
So I was able to pull up the civil plans for Astoria 2 because it's in process. They are not asking for variance on the height. I don't know the exact heights of the ones on Astoria 1. I thought about going up there and measuring them, but then I would be trespassing.
So there's no real record of them asking for a variance in the height of the walls?
There wasn't. So we have a layer on our GIS called Planner's Actions. I also pulled that up. It did not show a variance on the either Astoria property.
Okay. The second question is, within the total 36 feet, it seems to me, and I'm not sure, I didn't look at this hard enough, this question earlier, with so many 9-foot to 10-foot walls versus how many 8-foot walls would there be? Okay, so is that been looked at? Can you maybe address that a little bit?
To the first point, there's other walls over 10 feet within Prescott Lakes, which is the subdivision that we're in. So that's what I kind of based that off of. They're not in Astoria. They're over off of Solstice. To the second point, we've gone back and forth 6 ways to Sunday for over a year trying to get it to catch. I don't have the engineering in front of me, but it just wouldn't catch with the 8-foot walls. And so, this is as tight and as short a walls as we could make it work on that corner. And then the 10-foot wall is in the middle between, in the middle of the entire subdivision between the backyards of houses. So the 10-foot wall is not visible to the roads or any of the neighboring, the neighbors.
Okay, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4 walls instead of what I'm looking at is, what if there were 5 walls?
So
5 walls that meet the 8-foot.
yeah, it's my understanding that did not work in the engineering.
Mr. Chair, a follow-up question
Okay.
for the applicant. when you say it will not work because it reduces the number of lots versus if the walls were specifically to code, it would work. It would just change. You'd have to change your plot plan.
It would change the economics due to the topography. So it would change the project as a whole, not just that section.
Okay, I understand that, but ideally the project would have been designed to the code to begin with, and if you wanted to violate the code or having a variance of the code is a better word, you would have presented that initially to the city.
So in the first, second, and third rounds, we did have walls over 10 feet. And I don't know if it's a matter of the code has changed. I don't know when the 8-foot wall came into place. But Lion Engineering has worked with the city on numerous projects. And so, relying on their expertise, we went with this direction.
But just for clarification, your engineering firm could have started out with the code in mind and designed specifically that way.
So when we present the preliminary plat, it's a 40,000 foot view. Here's what we're trying to do on this project. And then you back engineer it upon city approval for the preliminary plat, you back engineer into that. So we had presented 52 lots. It was much bigger and we had a lot more 2-to-1 that would run into the neighboring properties. So to pull all that back and to keep as close to the wall design the detail that you saw, and keep that 36 foot, we had to go to the 9 foot within that. And so we had to drop 4 lots to make that work and to get it as close to the preliminary plat as we could without redesigning the whole thing. So you're right in the sense that we could have spent a whole bunch more time in engineering and money up front before the preliminary plat, but the preliminary plat is to get approval from all the powers that be to say, yeah, that's going to work, and then do the engineering.
And the approval that you refer to, is that a formal and informal?
It's a formal. It's with city council.
Okay, thank you. Could you comment on that approval, Kaylee?
Yeah, so preliminary plats do a full staff review, and once staff approves, then they go to planning and zoning, which was approved. Then the final plat, which is now under staff review, has to go through and be approved by staff, and that's approved by council. Barring that it's in substantial conformance with the prelim that was approved by planning and zoning.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
this is Mary Frederickson, and it's for staff. Curious as to the weight that you give to compliance with code versus looking back into history to see, well, before the code changed to 8 foot or whenever that happened, this 10-foot wall over here was permitted, and therefore we're going to give more weight to the fact that historically we've allowed 10 foot. When do you, or is it part of the thinking process that at some point you have to say, well, yes, this happened in the past, but now the code says 8 foot, and that's what we're going to stick with? How do you weigh historical allowances versus current code?
I think I understand. Yes, so the land development code as a whole was adopted. It was effective 2005. So, this has been in place for 19 years. The planner's actions layer on our GIS goes back 40 plus years. So we are considering historical context beyond the current LDC. Now, I did not go to other areas of town and start looking, because the way we reviewed these is in the context of the neighborhood, which I expanded the scope beyond the 300 feet because I didn't feel like that was adequate for this project. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you. The fact that you don't look within the entirety of Prescott for examples of developments that would not fly under today's code, but you look at the neighborhood, the nearby.
Yeah, and maybe George could explain more to that, why we don't. It's not that it would be an arduous task, because I'm up for arduous tasks, but it would start to pull in a lot of gray area to try to review every variance request against everything in the city of Prescott.
No, and I appreciate that. No, I was just wondering, at what point do you give more weight to the code, current code, as opposed to, even in the neighborhood,
Okay.
variances
Yes.
or things that happened in the past?
George looks like he wants to elaborate.
Maybe I don't need to. So I'm George Worley. I'm the planning manager for the city. Kaylee's description left out just one word, context. So when we get an application for variance, we look at the area around it only, because the impacts that are the potential impacts for a variance in that area are subject to the context of that area. Is it a hilly area? Is it an area that's wooded? Is it an area with creeks running through it? So we look at it only in those local areas because of the context of the development in that area.
Thank you. Thank you, Kaylee. I thought that you explained it well. Thank you.
Again, thank you for the discussion. Are there any more comments from the board?
Jim, I'd like to make a couple comments.
Okay.
Kaylee, George, as we know, even the thinnest pancake's got two sides. And so what's the downside of approving this? I mean, it seems like a big so what.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue, like, what's 1 foot more in certain sections? And then I understand there's just one wall that will be the 10 foot. As with all variance requests, I guess the only thing I think is precedent, that goes with a lot of boards and commission decisions. So, I mean, in an isolated instance, I don't, I reviewed it against our criteria in the land development code and came up with a motion to approve. So I don't feel it's problematic. I think probably the bigger question, the bigger opposition is probably for the development as a whole, which is not on the agenda.
Thank you. I'll make a couple of comments. One shoe doesn't fit all. And with the topography that's in the city of Prescott, and with the diminishing amount of availability of lots, we're going to see more and more of this kind of thing coming before the board. And while I appreciate the codes, I was on the council when we'd passed this code. And that one of the reasons why we have boards and commissions, such as the Board of Adjustments, is to take a look and vet things as they're coming out. And with regards to this particular issue, I don't see any public health or safety problems that are being created by approving this type of variance. And if there was a public health and safety issue, Kyla, can you tell me what it is?
Yeah, so I did. That was one of the criteria. I did not see a public health and safety issue. I mean, you could argue that the retaining walls bolster the safety of the site by preventing erosion. But no detrimental impacts to health and safety.
Thank you. Any more comments from the board?
Mr. Chair, Mark Upkins again. Just
Yes.
as a general comment, I mean, the code exists for a reason, and we either have a huge reason to grant a variance, or we ask that people design projects in compliance with the code. And this hasn't been built. I don't think land is broken. Nothing's been done. So there's a blank piece of canvas here. And I would assume with the blank piece of canvas, you could design a solution that works. And I'm concerned that the rationale for the design that does exist is to maximize the number of lots. We've already seen the applicant has been willing to, by his own words, eliminate 4 lots. I would think that the engineering firm that worked this would have been aware of the code ahead of time and could have come up with a solution that fit. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the board? Are there any comments from the public?
Yes, we have two
Come to the front.
comments from the public. First speaker will be Jim Orr.
If I may, good morning, everyone. My name is Jim Orr. I'm on the board of directors for the Prescott Lakes Community Association. And if I may, without encroaching too much on whatever time you're going to grant me, I believe I can answer Mr. Davis's questions that he just asked of staff. He specifically asked what were the wall heights in Saddleback, which is the project to the south. They're 4 foot high. And in discussion with Mr. Fan there, he felt that 4 foot was the adequate height that also fits within our requirements. The walls to the south of that at Astoria, none are over 10 foot. They're 8 foot floating panel walls that were put in 2004. I'm also unaware of any 10 foot walls in Solstice Ridge. However, there is a wall project going in Solstice Ridge 2B and 2C right now that our association has received no plans on, no permits on, even though the construction's ongoing. So I can't give you a complete answer on that one, if that answers your question. So good morning. What I'd like to tell you all is we are 100% pro builder and developer. We are, as may have been implied, not opposed to this development at all. Matter of fact, we support Mr. Kraxberger's efforts to do this, but we want it done in a responsible way. What does a responsible way mean? It means that they need to follow all of our association guidelines, governing documents, rules, policies, procedures, as well as our residential design guidelines and our parcel design guidelines, to include any city, county, or state ordinances. When they follow all of these things, then we end up with a good product. And we all know in relationships, the biggest failure is when you don't have communication. So when the developer doesn't communicate fully with us, there's a communication issue. So what I want to make you aware of today is, independent of action you may or may not take today, all variances must be approved by our Architectural Review Committee and then ultimately by our Board of Directors. So an affirmative vote here today does not mean that this project moves forward if there's not an affirmative vote by us. The way we're constituted with our Architectural Review Committee is through Article 4 of our CC&Rs. Then we're also in concert with ARS 331817 to constitute that. One of our fellow board members is actually the chair of this committee. We have various rules and requirements that all developers and builders and all lot owners must follow. And stated clearly on the preliminary plat plan that has come before the council, it says right there that they must follow all our CC&Rs. So what we're asking is a known entity. Here's a few rules that we have. All disturbed areas within 15 feet of the golf course must be landscaped. This project is right next to the golf course. No mass grading shall encroach on the golf course. All walls must be reviewed and approved by our Architectural Review Committee. No retaining walls can be higher than 6 feet. No slope can be greater than 3 to 1. A complete grading and drainage plan establishing the existing natural grade in sufficient detail is required to be presented to us. It has to list all plants, trees, cuts, fills, retaining walls, or foundations. We have not received this. All documents concerning this variance that's before you today, we received from the city. We received none from the builder. The only reason we knew about this meeting was we read an article in the paper on October 2nd. Had we not seen that, we wouldn't have been here to let you guys know of our involvement. And then really, I'd like to give you my disclaimer, because again, we want to be good partners. We want to support positive, well thought out growth. So the opinions I'm expressing you today are the opinions based on the information I have right now. If I get new information or my fellow board members get new information tomorrow, we certainly would consider that. So we're not locked in stone on these things. The document that I gave you, there's a couple interesting things. When you look at this picture up here and you look at the planning and zoning approved preliminary plat, it's referenced in the applications of January 12th and January 24th of 2023 that this is a BG and a multifamily lot. According to the master plan and the development agreement and the city's own zoning plan, this area is BG pad. The multifamily in the far northeast corner is not even recognized in the master plan or the development agreement, which we're signatories to. The only BG reference in this entire area is property that doesn't belong in Prescott Lakes. So that's part of the map that I just showed you to clarify. And another thing too, there's a comment, you know, some people think that this development agreement sunsetted, it did not. And people have difficulty interpreting it, but I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too much on that. But just to let you know, the city on its own cannot decide density. According to the agreement, density must be decided by the developer one. So they're the only ones that can change in conjunction with other people once approvals are sought what the general density is here. So this lot is BG pad, not MF, not BG. That's what it's recognized on. The whole reason why, when this project first came forward, it was presented as, I believe, 140 units of townhomes and other rentals. That was quickly scrapped, not allowed. So, you know, there's just seems to be a little bit of miscommunication on some of these things. But back to the moment at hand here. So the argument is we want a higher retaining wall. As I've told you, our documents only allow for a 6-foot wall. Code says 8-foot wall. And the request is for 8 to 10-foot wall. I don't want to put words in Mr. Krexberger's mouth, but reading his application, it says he wants 10-foot walls. I read nothing in there that says some walls are going to be 10 and some are going to be 9. So we're going to assume they're 10-foot walls. And what I want you to understand is this one variance that you're looking at has upstream and downstream effects on the entire project. Here's why. If you allow these walls, that means that already platted open area will be 100% disturbed and covered with 324,000 cubic yards of fill. It's not allowed. And if it was allowed, it has to be approved by the city council. It can't be approved by staff. It's not a minor alteration. So the sections I've cited in there for you, I'm pretty confident in them. Again, I can make some mistakes. Part of the deal too is The original preliminary plat that came in shows 36.7% open space, which is required when you have a 20 or 30% slope. By allowing these walls and the burying of all this land, you wouldn't have that. So that's a problem. So it brings into play that when you look at a variance for 6.8.4, you must also look at 6.8.1, 2, 3, and other land development codes. So this one wall variance can't be looked at in a microscope. You have to look at how does it affect the whole project. Another question. The city requires a 2-foot contour interval. The partial plan that was presented shows a 5-foot contour interval. What's the difference? 2-foot contour shows greater slope, gives you better topography. A 5-foot gives you the impression that this is lower rolling hills. It is not. The other interesting part about this thing too is when we talk about notification to people and 300 feet or 1,500 feet. With me today is Kevin, the general manager of the club at Prescott Lakes, which, by the way, the Prescott Lakes Community Association is an owner in. We received no notification of this, but as you can look at the picture right there, you see how close the golf course is. Why weren't we notified about this variance? Don't know. So as I go through these things with you panel, I want you to know again, we are pro-development, we are pro-good partners, we want this developer to be successful, but we want people to follow the rules. And if they're not going to follow the rules, we have to call it out. So when you look at 6.83, residential density allocation maximum site disturbance, it states that lots on hillside slopes, 20 to 30 degree slopes, can only be 30% disturbed. If you allow these walls, it'll be 100% disturbed. That requires city council overview for a 6.8.3, in my opinion, and those of others who have looked at this. So again, an affirmative vote on this variance today is not going to move the project forward because other issues are going to come up on these other portions of it. Then we have 6.8.5, the hillside development standards, which you asked about. That's impacted. 9.5.9C of the land development code is impacted because it states specifically in there open space must be stated on the preliminary and final plat and cannot be built upon. These walls, again, would require 100% disturbance in violation of that, in our opinion. So a few other things we have here. Has a slope analysis been done to identify the hillside areas pursuant to Land Development Code 6.8? If so, we'd like to see it. 6.82, City Council has full discretion in which to modify the hillside development standards, not city staff, not the Board of Adjustments, only the City Council. 6.83, density I spoke of. 6.84, the natural area shall be delineated on preliminary and final plats and indicated as a no-build easement. Must be on there. So a few things we'd like you to consider. If you even contemplated approving this at this moment, rather than deferring it till more information came in, we're looking for assurances that no more would be, that 30% would be maintained undisturbed as required by the code in 6.8. None of these walls can be constructed in the open space, already notified plat, no build areas. Engineer of record should prepare a slope analysis identifying the protected hillside areas over 20% pursuant to the Land Development Code. City engineer should require that the whole hillside is sectioned off when the work occurs to make sure that there's no issue. And then just a couple interesting things that we thought here. The notice of this hearing went out in the Daily Courier on October 2nd. According to the staff's report, they wrote in here, and it's almost a quote, staff reports no comments received from the public as of October 4th. Is 48 hours the standard for the public to comment on such matters?
I just want to clarify, there's language that says we will take comments up to the meeting, but they just won't be published in the agenda packet because we have to get it in our agenda routing software 2 weeks out. But like if we received something, well, probably not at 9 p.m. last night because we're all off work, but if we received something yesterday at 3, we would have forwarded it to the board. I just want to clarify that.
Now, I'm not assigning any nefarious means. I'm just saying that it's a pejorative statement to indicate to you, the board, that, gosh, we haven't received any comments. Well, it's only been 2 days. You know, I just found that, I find words matter. The other part of the thing I find words matter is this project is described as west of State Route 89 across from Watson Lake. That pretty much covers everything at Prescott Lakes to the senior center. Everybody knows this project is in Prescott Lakes, and the only way you can access it is off of Prescott Lakes Parkway via a smoke tree extension. Anybody that drives by can see it. They can see the fan project going. You can see the other project, which my photos indicate to you with all the open space that would be buried if these walls went in. Again, I'm not assigning any nefarious means, but I drove that and duplicated the exact photo that is in your thing. And quite frankly, I know where the project is, and you may see a very small sliver of the top of the slope of the project. However, if you go to Prescott Lakes Parkway and you park anywhere along there, you can see probably 75% of the project. I just think words and descriptions matter, and for our members, we want to be clear. And lastly, I'll leave you with this, and I'll answer any questions you have. My fellow board members and I have a legal, moral, and ethical duty to watch out for our members, including Mr. Kraxberger, because he's a member as a lot owner. And we have this ethical duty to ask these questions, to have transparency, and that's all we want here. We want transparency. We don't want to find out about a variance out of the newspaper that has far-reaching implications on other parts of this project. We don't want to hear how the project next door has the same type of wall when they're 4 feet high and you're requesting 2.5 times the size of that wall. We don't want to hear how Astoria has walls when they're a floating panel wall, not a hand-constructed rockery wall, completely different. So this is it. We want proper information. We want Mr. Kraxberger to be successful. We want to be a good partner for him. But again, if you take a positive vote on this today, it's going to go to our art committee. It's already in violation of our rules. And even if they gave an affirmative, it goes to the board of directors. And if we give a negative, it doesn't move forward. So let's work together here. And I'm happy to entertain any questions you have, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your comment. Any response from the board to the gentleman's comments? I would go to the developer and ask him, you want to comment?
Yeah, so the plans that you guys have were sent to HomeCo on August 27th. It's the exact same plans, nothing's changed there. We went before the Architectural Review Committee on the 1st of October and received preliminary approval. We'll go through a preliminary approval and then finalize the landscaping and the remaining engineering and then go for a final approval before them. As far as open space is concerned, the walls and the height of the walls actually increases open space. Otherwise, we end up with fill slopes or 2-to-1, 3-to-1 that runs into the open space. And so the walls actually break that up and help The walls in question, there is a 10-foot wall, and like I said, it's in the middle. It's actually in the backyard of a couple of the houses, the to-be-built houses. So it's right there. I believe that's lot 48 to your right.
Is it that?
That red line, yep.
Okay.
So that's not going to be visible from any of the neighboring properties. That's obviously visible from those two properties. Any ones that are at the top of the screen, those will be visible from Prescott Lakes Parkway, and those are the 9-foots. So hopefully that answers all the questions. And then I've got pictures of the walls off of Ascot and a Solstice Ridge, or Solstice Drive rather, that are over 10 feet if you wanted to look at those. So those are in Prescott Lakes. They're obviously not in Saddleback or Astoria 2, however you refer to it. Those ones are still under construction.
Thank you for your response. Any comments from the board? Do I have?
Comment, Mr. Lamerson, if I can.
Go. You have to go
Yes,
to the
you can.
podium.
Go to the microphone.
There is no Ascot in Solstice Ridge 2, so I'm unfamiliar where that is. And again, I'm unfamiliar with any 10-foot walls. I'm also unfamiliar with Mr. Kraxberger saying he was approved for something. He was given a preliminary approval to proceed pending other documents and requirements he had to provide to us. So that's it on that one. And then again, lastly, on these things, there is not more open space created. You don't bury a hillside and then claim the buried hillside is more open space. It's basic flaw of physics. And again, I find it interesting that the golf course wasn't noticed on this, because those 4 big, huge walls you see up there at the top northwest will be the predominant 100% viewable feature from the golf course, rather than the beautiful, lush vegetation and animal sanctuaries we have there now.
A notice did get sent to, I think, the Prescott Lakes General
Okay,
address. I just wanted to clarify that because
it was sent to the club at Prescott.
and
Lakes.
I did this all very straightforward and honestly. So I, want to address the statement you made about the description being misleading. Personally, I find natural landmarks to be very helpful for people to refer to things. So that's why I put that on there.
Right, I make no disparaging comments to you. We have the manager of the club here. I'm sure he'll tell you that no one at the club received notification. Unsure where it got mailed. We all know in today's world, the mail is a little suspect. And lastly, in my life, I describe things through words. And I believe that the description of this property being located off of Prescott Lakes Parkway in Prescott Lakes via Smoke Tree extension is much more easily recognizable than west of the Highway 69, 89, Roundtree. That's just me. That's just me, not trying to be argumentative. Just a suggestion. Just as is with the notice. I like to be as open and honest as we can here. And again, even if you move forward with an affirmative here, we're going to be back at the council meeting on the following Tuesday, and we're going to present the same thing, saying that the movement of 340,000 cubic yards of earth, which was not disclosed on the preliminary plat, requires city council approval. And to Mr. Davis's question, I believe we were talking about why has this gone through so many changes. The original preliminary plat didn't say retaining walls, did it? Then the conceptual plan that was approved by the city council did not state retaining walls.
They're on the plat that was approved.
The conceptual plan presented to the city did not state retaining walls. Is my position that was presented to the city. Possible or not. Like I said, we want to be good partners. We want to work together. Everything that we can, but when we have a seat at the table and it's not acknowledged, then we're going to stop the process on our side till we get all the information we can to make informed decisions. That's all we're trying to do on our side, make an informed decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your conversation. George, would you like to respond?
Just a little bit of clarification as to your role. You can take into consideration any of the information relating to the Land Development Code. You cannot take any consideration of any of the homeowners association's rules or the HOA rules that are associated with the development agreement. That's outside your realm. It is within their control and their realm, and they will handle it separately. The issue that was requested through this variance application was to address the wall heights and whether they can be 8 feet or 9 feet, or in one case, 10 feet. Those variations within the city's code are within your jurisdiction. The concerns about adverse impacts of the wall heights extending beyond that, as long as they're related to the Land Development Code, that is a legitimate consideration for you to take. If it's consideration, again, of HOA rules, that's something they're responsible for and have to handle separate from your responsibility. So just wanted to make sure that there's a bright line between Land Development Code requirements, which you have the ability to modify, and non-land development requirements that are going to fall under the HOA's rules and their processes. So there was a bit of a blend in that presentation of both, and I just want to make sure that you understand where that bright line is. One other consideration, most of you have been on here for a while. No matter who or how far we notice, it's not enough. Someone will object to how far the notice went out, or I didn't get one, my neighbor across the street got one. Some of that's outside of our control. We produce notifications based on the mapping system. The mapping system's based on data from the county. We send to property owners as listed by the county. So that's the address where tax bills go. That's where we send our notice. Some of them don't arrive. I talked to a nice gentleman at the beginning of the meeting who was here for an item that had been continued. He received the notice of the meeting. We mailed a second notice saying the continuance would move it into November. He did not receive that one. It's the same notice list that was mailed out both times. He got it one time, he didn't get it the other time. Those things can happen. Much of that's outside of our control. And I'd be happy to answer questions if you have them.
Thank you, George. Are there any questions of George or the applicant from the commission?
And I do believe you have one more public speaker request.
Okay, thank you, George. Are there any more discussion items to come from the public?
Yes, we've got Mr. Kevin Pollock. Hopefully I said that right.
Good morning. My name's Kevin Pollock. I'm the club manager at the club at Prescott Lakes. I've had the good fortune of being there about 2 years now, and so I feel very welcome in this community. And
Sir, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. Could you either pull the
That's what
mic
everybody
closer to
says
you or
about
speak
me.
up? Thank you.
I've lived here about 2 years now, and it's a wonderful community. And I just thank everybody for all their service. I came from a small town outside of Lake Geneva, and it's very similar here. And I can tell by the look on this young lady's face, she sent me the notification. I never saw it, but I trust that it happened, I think, without a
Thank
doubt.
you.
I think we're extremely pro-builder, without a doubt. For 31 years, I worked for the same family. We built 4 master planned communities, all over 2,000 acres. I absolutely understand it, understand what he's going through. For me, the only vehicle the club has to make sure the drainage is done right and the encumbrances and the disturbances and the car paths is for us to work through the community association. Nobody really notifies us, so it's the CCRs and it's the ARC who really are kind of our saving grace. Last year, the club spent $300,000 on a gabion wall. I'm not saying it was all because of developers, but the last development right now is dumping so much water on us, it's tearing the golf course apart. And there would have been a different way. And so I have to rely on them and really appreciate what they're doing. And they're very passionate that everything works well. in the community. And so I'm just here to say that it's the only option I really have. I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything because we don't get involved where the water's running from this development or what it's going to look like. So we put all our trust into the CCRs and our HOA. And so that's about all I have to say. It's just short and brief, and just appreciate your time. Thank you for listening.
Do you put any faith and confidence in the planning and zoning and the land development code of the city of Prescott?
Well, of course I do.
Well, I'm just asking. I mean, you were really touting a lot of other things, and I just want to remember that I agree with a couple of my fellow board members here. There's a reason why we have a land development code. There's also a reason why we have the Board of Adjustments. All right. So, and that's one of the things that the city's been pretty good on. So, and it's in the benefit of the majority of Prescott. I mean, we're not here to pick and choose winners and losers. What we are here to do is to see that things get done right.
And I don't disagree at all. I don't know that people stand in my seat or have seen what I've seen in the last 2 years when it rains, the destruction to our property that I have to take care of. And I have to rely on the community association. That's all I have to arrive on. And it takes the whole village to make all of this go. I mean, we met with Mike Fan a number of times so that we could get this cart path in the right place so it was safe for our members. All of the members were coming to me saying, you can't put it on the street. And so we sat with Mike, we worked with Mike, and the cart path was changed and moved, and he was very accommodating. Those conversations came place because of the ARC and the community association, and I would have never known because they don't have to come to the golf course for anything. So I appreciate what everybody does. It really takes everybody. I know that.
Thank you very much for your comments. Any more discussion from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Tom Davis, thank you. First of all, I'd like to commend staff for the effort they do. The basic requirement is 300 feet. You went out to 1,300 feet. Is that correct?
I did.
For noticing.
And like George said, I mean, it will never be enough, and it's okay. Like, citizens have the right to feel like it's not enough.
I just want to compliment you.
Yes,
the fact that
1,000 feet more.
you went out further than was really required.
Yes.
For noticing, and I admire that. That effort and so forth. Some really good information presented. Here's the thing I would have loved to see is the difference between the 8-foot wall requirement that we wouldn't see, the resulting site plan or whatever the case may be. We have to speculate on that. And I'm concerned about the precedent of setting, going outside the land development code without really good justification, and I just don't see it. I mean, I'm sure there's an economic impact, but I just don't see it from a community standpoint and a relationship to the overall code and so forth. So without, I guess, more information or a better look at what exactly the impact is here, I can't vote for approval.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the board?
Yes, Mary Frederickson, Chair. I see this as different than the request for variance that comes before the board where there is a single home being developed on a single lot, and they're asking for a variance because of the topography. There's no way to accommodate the house that they're looking to build because of the topography. And this is a different situation than that, given that it's a larger development. There's many different options that the developer could undertake to comply with the code. I don't see that there's a specific reason why a variance is required in this instance, other than to let the developer go forward with the plans as they currently have them. I'm assuming that 8 foot was put into the code for a reason, and it was thought whether or not 10 foot would be better than 8 foot, but 8 foot was chosen for the code, and I don't see any reason not to comply with code.
Thank you for your comment. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, if possible, I'd like to make a motion.
I was going to ask for a motion here in a moment. Okay? I want to give everybody on the board an opportunity to speak. And I want to make sure that there's no more comments from the public. Not hearing any more comments from the public. Can I have a motion from the board to either approve or deny the variance?
Mr. Chair, Mark Oakness here. I agree with my fellow board members that there is a reason that we have a 8-foot requirement with the code, and there definitely are solutions for the landowner to utilize the lot. As Mary said, we deal with sometimes variances where there really isn't an option. It's either utilize the land or it goes away. This definitely does have options. And so I move that V24-008 be denied.
Thank you for your motion. Do I hear a second?
Mary Frederickson, second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motions signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed to it signify by saying aye. The variance is denied unanimously.
Okay. Any staff updates?
Are there any staff updates?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One staff update. Next Thursday, the 24th of this month, we will be holding an open house at the Prescott Library for the general plan, which is in the public comment period right now. And we encourage anyone who may want to attend to come take a look at it. There is also a link on the city's website that allows you to go to a virtual meeting room, and you can read the entire plan and make comments there as well. So thank you.
Thank you for your update, George. Any more updates?
Nope.
All right, not hearing any. I adjourn the meeting.